Hey guys, welcome to Memory Lane. My name is Source of Food, and if you're happening on this channel for the first time, this is where I sit and I reminisce about the good old days. Um, Growing up in the 60s, back in rural Jamaica, talking about that time period, my childhood experiences around that time, and going into the 70s somewhat. Right? So welcome. Now today I want to talk about a situation we had to deal with as children. Well, not just children, but the adults also. What I want to talk about today, which is kind of the subject and maybe not exactly the main part of the subject, was the issue of drinking water. You know, clean drinking water, right? So where I grew up in rural Jamaica, right, we never had running water. Even to this day, July 2022, when I'm recording this video, this community still does not have running water, right? It's a rural community. There's electricity there. At least before I left there, the roads were asphalted, but still the issue of running water is still an existent one, so to speak. So it was common then, growing up as kids, to see tanks. Everybody had a tank. No, I think I'm exaggerating when I say everybody, because we never had one. But most homes would have had tanks, and if you had a tank, for the most part, you would allow your neighbor to come and fetch water from your tank if they didn't have one, or if their tank was dry for whatever reason, maybe going through a drought or whatever. But yeah, so most homes then would have had tanks. I'm from Manchester, right? And there was this saying among people from other parts of the island, especially people from St. Elizabeth and maybe Clarendon and people in Kingston or wherever. In these areas where it was more common to have running water, is the fact that people from Manchester suffered from cavities a lot. And part of the reason for that was because of the cement that is in the cement that is used to construct these tanks, right? It is said that cement is a big contributor to enamel decay, right? But living in Manchester around that time, 60s and 70s, and maybe even to this day, in that specific area, that community, people never had much of a choice but to build tanks, right? And so that was the main source of water for drinking and cooking and washing and watering plants and all of that. Some tanks would have what was called a barbecue, which was mainly another catchment area made from concrete that was adjacent to the tank, and when it rains, the water would run off and run into the tank, right, and fill it up. Another method would people putting gutters, just like in a modern home right now, gutters are around the house. So the water that runs off the roof of the house would run into the tank and fill it up, right? But most homes never had that luxury. Most people were poor. A lot of people could not afford guttering around their homes. It was just a little barbecue, setting up some zincs, maybe 10, 12 sheet of zinc adjacent to the tank, if you could afford it, and set it up in such a way that it runs the water. When it rains, the water would be funneled into the tank, and that was how the tanks were filled up. Yeah, but so tanks were a very common staple or piece of construction or a commodity. What's the right word? That you would find around most homes back then because of the lack of running water, right? But there are times when we would have a drought and long droughts, and people's tank would get low. The water, a neighbor's tank may gotten so low to the point where the water is not suitable for drinking anymore because of all the silt and mud at the bottom of it. And they would go to another neighbor's house for water, to get some water for domestic use and all of that. But what I'm driving at though is I'm talking about tanks today and drinking water. And drinking water is really the main issue. But I really want to drive home the point of having to drink the water even when it's kind of, undesirable, seem undesirable to drink. I'll give you an example. So as a tropical country, you find a lot of animals, all over the place. My community was no different. And one of those animals were frogs, right? Frogs were common. I think what we call frog in Jamaica is actually the toad, because I think the toad is the bigger one and the frogs are the smaller one. But back home, we kind of reverse it. We call the big ones frogs, the big bullfrogs, and the smaller ones were what we call toads, right? So the frogs were common around the place. And if you know frogs love water. And especially around the dry season, because I think they're cold-blooded animals or whatever reason, but they would gravitate towards water. And if you know frogs again, they lay their eggs in water, wherever they can find water, and then you would get the tadpole. They would hatch and it become tadpoles and all of that, right? But these frogs, especially when it gets really dry, when the temperature of the community, or we are going through a drought or something like that, and it gets really dry, they would gravitate toward the tanks, right? And you never want to see frogs in your tank, but especially when the water is low, right? So there are times, man, when we're going through a drought. As a kid, I can remember, and you go to the tank or a neighbor's tank to fetch water, and there's this big old bullfrog in the tank, right? And then you never had much of a choice. You still had to drink the water, even though this undesirable animal is swimming in it. You still had to drink it. I think part of the attraction for these frogs was because of the dragonfly, and sometime other larvas maybe you'd have found them in the water. So that could have been a draw for them, apart from wanting to lay their eggs in the tank. Yeah, the larvae of the dragonfly, I think, was a big draw. And you would find these tanks and these, whatever, in the tanks, and you would have to drink the water. Now, there are times when we would boil it to make sure that it did not hurt us or kill us. But for the most part, we had to, we just drank it as is. And, maybe as a kid, I can remember a lot of times we got sick. That could have been a part of the reason. But it's something it came back to my mind recently, and I said, "Whoa, man! The things we had to do, the kind of water we had to drink as kids, to because we never had a choice. You know, these things were swimming in your water. Um, water is filled. Water, tank was filled with all kind of lava in it. You know, and we still had to drink it, man, because that was just how life was back then. And yeah, so that's a childhood memory that I thought I would share. I mean, not anything. It's not anything fun, but just a fact of life that we had to deal with back then. So the lack of good drinking water is still an issue worldwide in many countries. I'm not disputing that for 1 minute. If you watch programs like World Vision or other, you know, many of these programs that are similar, part of the objective or their aim is to go into many of these underdeveloped countries and to develop systems where people can get fresh, clean drinking water. So the issue of drinking water, it's still a problem. I mean, proper drinking water. But what I'm trying to say, apart from the joke that we experienced back then, you know, um, the biggest challenge we had then was drinking water with these undesirable creatures um, swimming in them, and finding ways to get them out of your tank. You know, so what is it like where you are? I mean, is water still a problem? Proper drinking water? Is it something that you know that you take for granted? Like me, I mean, I'm living in North America right now, and you walk to the bathroom or the kitchen, and you turn on the tap, and there is water, right? To the point where I think we actually take it for granted. But in many parts of the world, it's not so. I mean, water is a precious commodity wherever you are, but more so in in many countries, it's not something that people take for granted. People have to walk miles to fetch proper drinking water, and sometimes the water is less than you can't even call it proper, because it's full of all kind of germs and bacteria, and they don't even have the wherewithal to boil it before they drink it, right? So while I may complain, or while I may sit here and reminisce about frogs in my drinking water, I'm sure there were people who were going through worse than that. What was it like for you as a kid? Maybe you're my age, maybe you're older, maybe you're younger. How do you view drinking water? Is your drinking water easily accessible? What is it like for you? Um, Tell me about it. All right? I love to hear. Chime in. Leave a comments in the comment section below and let me know. All right? Anyway, this is Memory Lane. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and if you like the channel and the videos that are posted here, don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a beat. All right? Take care until our next video.